and welcome. I'm Laurel Stewart, and here's what happened this week. A Chinese influencer was ordered to leave Taiwan before midnight on Wednesday. But before she left, she made a stand in front of the Interior Ministry, where she was greeted by around 100 counter-protesters telling her to go home. Cadence Quaranta reports.
Controversy and anger spilling over onto the streets of Taipei as a Chinese influencer known as Yaya protests the Taiwanese government's decision to revoke her marriage-based residency permit over controversial videos she posted on social media. Waiting for her there are around 100 counter-protesters who shout for her to go back to China.
Go back to China! Go back to China! Bye, bye, Yaya!
In her videos, immigration officials say Yaya advocated for the unification of Taiwan and China by force. By doing so, officials said she broke the law by threatening Taiwan's national security and social stability, and have ordered her to leave Taiwan by midnight on Wednesday. But just hours before that deadline, the influencer maintained she never made those kinds of statements.
你们大家都说，包括行政单位都在说我是鼓吹武统，因为这个言论，所以要把我驱离台湾。那我呢，一直在自己的影片中，并没有找到我鼓吹武统的影片。总之，我是非常不希望发生战争。我主张的是和平统一。
In his first public appearance, Yaya's Taiwanese husband joined her in front of the Ministry of Interior, which oversees immigration matters, asking the government to reverse its decision.
我真的衷心要求内政部暂停对我太太雅雅的驱离处分，你一定要留给我们家庭不能直接的这样子破裂。
But only meters away, counter-protesters upset with Yaya's videos tried to break past barriers to get to her, clashing with police.
你现在听我讲话，我是来送雅雅的，我们是战友哎，他想要回归中共国，我们在帮他回归中共国，对不对？对。啊，为什么我们不能过去？为什么？
今天你是一个拿居留证的人，就表示你可能是我们台湾的客人。那你想想看，如果今天你好心邀请一个客人到你们家做客。 结果这个客人居然说我要带我家里面的人一起来打你，可不可以啊？那一定不受欢迎的嘛。那不受欢迎，我们把他赶出去而已啊。
The scene goes to show just how controversial this case has become in Taiwan. Among the protesters, there was even one from China.
中国有多差，他心里清楚，所以他不敢回去，他不想回去，他想占台湾的资源，想占台湾的好。
Some have questioned the decision on the basis of free speech, but officials have hit back, maintaining that Yaya's comments have harmed Taiwan's national security and are not within the bounds of protected speech.
大家可以看到，从法律战、舆论战跟心理战，它这个呢可以说是三战齐发。不管是行政单位，或是我们的司法单位，都已经做出最后的一个裁示，希望雅雅能够按照我们原来的行政处分来做处理。
The National Immigration Agency told TaiwanPlus earlier today that if Yaya does not leave before the deadline, they will act in accordance with the law and forcibly deport her. Chris Ma, Fu Hua Hung, Pichi Zhuang, and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Civic groups in Taiwan are scrambling to recall dozens of lawmakers from the country's two biggest political parties. As the parties fight for control in the legislature, the country's courts have become a new battleground. Leslie Liao has more.
Recall movements are taking aim at lawmakers from Taiwan's two biggest political parties, the Democratic Progressive Party and the Kuomintang. Civic groups are looking to take down legislators from both parties over differences in the country's legislature. The opposition Kuomintang, in coalition with the smaller Taiwan People's Party, holds a slight majority over the ruling DPP in Taiwan's chamber. The impasse has caused deadlocks over everything from the country's judiciary to the annual budget. Taiwan's recall laws require voters to sign petitions to progress past each stage. The KMT has landed itself in legal trouble over recall petition efforts. Last week, authorities in the southern city of Tainan detained representatives from a KMT branch office on suspicion of forgery after carrying out an extensive search. They investigated allegations that some signatures supporting the KMT were fraudulent.
对国民党来说， 很显然，国民党伪造文书、抄名册、滥用个资的状况已经离谱到，这个是一目了然的程度，让检方、让法院都已经去提起了相关的动作。
On the other side, the KMT says a civic group targeting one of their legislators is collecting fraudulent signatures. A group of KMT lawmakers have filed a suit against the civic group, calling on Taipei prosecutors to investigate their petition efforts. The KMT's argument is that the DPP is using its influence as ruling party to manipulate the recalls.
民主国家，除非这个政党犯了滔天大罪、杀人放火最大的问题，你不会看到有任何这个民主国家的民主政党、执政党，他会用司法的权力，然后去抄家灭族，去搜索在野党的党部。
The civic group the KMT is targeting says it's followed all relevant laws. These cases are still pending, but it shows just how heated Taiwan's recall movement is getting. With the legislature at stake, both parties are using any means at their disposal to fight. Joseph Wu and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
An unmarked ship with a Chinese crew was intercepted in Taiwan's restricted waters last week. As Chris Gorin reports, it's now suspected of being part of China's grey zone operations, which have been ramping up in recent months.
No name, no flag, and no home port. That's the status of a suspected Chinese civilian ship detained and under investigation by Taiwan's Coast Guard. The ship, intercepted inside Taiwan's restricted waters on Sunday, had 6 crew members, all of whom are suspected Chinese nationals, but none of them were carrying ID. On the ship was 500,000 liters of fuel, which the Coast Guard suspects was meant for refueling illegal fishing boats in Taiwan's restricted waters. The vessel and crew are now in Taipei Harbor, where the investigation is underway. The incident is part of a slew of recent maritime activity from Chinese government and civilian vessels around Taiwan. The Coast Guard says it's part of China's gray zone strategy aimed at wearing down the country's defenses. That includes multiple instances of Chinese civilian ships cutting Taiwan's underwater internet cables in recent months. And just last week, Chinese Coast Guard vessels were chased out of Taiwan's restricted waters near its outlying Jinmen Islands. When you combine China's frequent military drills with the flurry of recent civilian incidents, it adds up to a lot of pressure on Taiwan's Coast Guard and military. Scott Huang, Eason Chen, and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
China has unveiled a new kind of deep-sea cable cutter. The South China Morning Post says the device is intended for research, but with several cables recently cut around Taiwan, many are skeptical of China's intentions. For more on this, Jaime Ocon spoke to Jonathan Wahlberg. He's the Associate Director of Taiwan Security Monitor, an open-source research initiative at George Mason University.
So what can you tell us about this new kind of cable cutter that China has reportedly unveiled?
So one of the important things to note is that this is actually different than a lot of the other methods that they've used for cable sabotage in the past. And so up until this point, what China's been doing and what everyone's been doing for undersea cable sabotage is using a sort of towed anchor that drags behind a ship that's on the surface. And it looks like an anchor, it kind of goes behind, and as the ship crosses the cable, it hits it and it drags it, and it's what sabotages it. What's different with this is it's actually at a different depth, and this is being attached to a submersible device. It's on a submarine, and it's almost like a chainsaw just attached to a submarine. So this new technology can work at up to 4,000 meters, which is pretty significant, because what it means is that it allows operation further away from the shore.
So in gaining this kind of capability, do you think that we're going to see a more organized or concerted effort from China to find and sabotage Taiwan's undersea cables?
The pattern of incidents here really suggests a deliberate effort. And also, Chinese state media has been talking all about this and showing the abilities. And they're not just talking about the abilities for civilian use. They're talking about its abilities to disrupt cables. Since 2023, Taiwan's experienced numerous undersea cable disruptions. And at Taiwan Security Monitor, the research group that I've been working with, we've been collecting data and tracking incidents of this cable sabotage and actually locating where this has all taken place. And prior to this, a lot of the stuff's taken place in shallow waters, closer to the landing stations. And with the submarine capabilities, we're probably going to see a lot of these newer incidents coming in deeper waters. And the ocean's a pretty big place, even if it's just the Taiwan Strait. And so what's difficult is it's not happening 1 or 2 kilometers away. It's often happening a little bit further out. And the further out you get, the more difficult it becomes to see that, just because you're watching from a very broad view.
So aside from deploying more ships and being more vigilant, what else can Taiwan do to combat these gray zone operations?
And so when there's an incident, be the first party to produce information on it, be the first party to send out articles, to have interviews, to have photos of the ships, because when you allow China to do this, you're giving them the ability to start the story. And it really makes Taiwan look like the boy who cried wolf. Another thing that it does is it gives China more credibility when it takes it away from Taiwan. And so, especially when it comes to this narrative warfare, it's really important for Taiwan to be proactive in getting the information and putting it out there before China is able to create their web.
That was Jonathan Wahlberg from the Taiwan Security Monitor. Taiwan's exports outlook remains strong for its lucrative chips and electronics business, despite looming US tariffs. US President Donald Trump's tariff policy has shaken global markets, but leading Taipei economic think tank TIR says Taiwan should be able to hit its 3% growth target for the year. Washington is set to unveil reciprocal tariff plans next week, targeting countries that run trade surpluses with the US, which includes Taiwan. Trump has also suggested a separate tariff on imported chips.
那现在就是说，因为川普的政策是说，到底是对等关税，还是贸易顺差，还是贸易量大的，这个都没有讲清楚部分。如果真的是就字面上来讲对等关税的话，理论上半导体跟伺服器那个是不能课税的。
TIR says Taiwan's simple tariff rate is a little higher than the US's, but its weighted tariff of 1.6 is in fact lower than Washington's. A growing number of Formosan Sika deer are being spotted in southern Taiwan, causing problems for the local ecosystem. Our reporter Sandy Chi explains.
A sign of successful conservation. Thousands of Formosan Sika deer roaming in Kenting National Park in southern Taiwan. In only a few decades, the park's Sika deer population has grown from just 22 in 1980 to approximately 3,800 in 2024. The deer were introduced to the area from Taipei Zoo as part of a long-term rewilding program. However, the success has come at a cost, taking a significant toll on the local ecology. The Sika deer conservation area includes the Kenting Uplifted Coral Reef Nature Reserve, a unique environment established in 1995. It serves as a vital habitat for various tree species, including banyan trees with aerial roots, tropical rainforests, and monsoon forests.
那第一次调查的时候，那时候我们知道整个森林10公顷里面有42000多棵树，然后一直到2018年的时候，就剩下25000多棵。那新增样目的话，变化在这个部分我们看的是比较心惊胆跳的哈。梅花鹿主要是它主要影响，还有少量其他的事件影响的。
To help the trees recover and continue with the deer conservation, fences were installed in the park. However, the area faces challenges related to funding and maintenance. To control the Sika deer population, contraceptive vaccines are another option. But this approach also comes with its own obstacles.
它的出生季过后呢，在春天，然后一直到下一个繁殖季开始，一个生殖季开始就是秋天，这短短的大概半年的时间，你要在整个族群当中70%、80% 的鹿都能够达到。
Conservation is an ongoing challenge. Even when successful, experts say it still requires more planning and collaboration to safeguard both wildlife species and ecosystems, maintaining the balance of nature. Ryan Wu and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching Here's What Happened. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out these real-life Lego buildings at the Windsor Legoland in the UK. I'm Laurel Stewart. Take care and see you next week.